James is having grilled vegetables and kale, pineapple, and tomatoes. And he might be talking about civilization because he started the second disc on this one. Or he might be talking about some of these other things, I'm not sure. And I guess I'll just let you go, James. Go ahead.
Yeah, you don't have any.
Nope. I'm going to talk about nothing. I'm going to eat my tacos. Well, probably I should go inside and eat my tacos so I don't crunch. Yeah, you just get talking. And I'll come back when I'm done my tacos.
You can crunch, I'll pretend it's applause.
That's okay. I'll be back in a minute. You just talk.
Okay, so earlier I was talking about a woman from UCLA, presumably an academic, who was talking about how hard it was for women in history, modern day history, to get any respect. They're a little bit like Rodney Dangerfield. And Distaff Rodney Dangerfield. And talking about, we're going through the Egyptian history, and we found out that one of her 5 quoted queens wasn't really a queen or a king. It was just kind of buried as a king, but she was just a regent for the true king. Probably a minor. So now she does, I gather, Cleopatra, the one that's famous in history and art, and maybe even song. Yeah, Queen of Denial. Maybe that's. Is that a country and western song? Should be. It isn't. Cleopatra doesn't count. She does mention Cleopatra, and Cleopatra doesn't get respect according to her. In history, she's kind of like a designing female or something like that. And I don't know about that. And by all accounts, by modern standards, she was, well, not all accounts, but looking at the coins, maybe the coins were done by people who are used to doing men or something like that, but she had a huge honker of a nose. By today's standards, she would have been considered quite homely. But standards change. I mean, was it William Butler Yeats was enamored of a woman called Maud Gonne or something like that, and he would write poetry where he was kind of like talking about her being the most beautiful woman ever or something like that. And you see pictures of her and you go, yeah, okay. So by today's standards, yeah. So standards change from society to society and from time to time. So from place to place and from time to time. Anyway, so the trouble with Cleopatra is, just think about this, okay? What name is her name? Like, what does it mean? Patra. It comes from a root that's P-A-T-E-R. What does that mean in Latin? Well, like we get patriarchal from Latin. Patrician and Patricia and Patrick and paternal. And we could get roots. We could get similar words from a language called Greek. Because I gather P-A-T-E-R means father in Greek. See, it was ancient Egyptian. And if this isn't an oxymoron, modern Coptic, relatively modern Coptic. Coptic is a dead language, it's a liturgical kind of language. For the Coptic Church, the Copts, as I've said before, and I'll say it again and again, until the nifty, shifty, hefty lefties are sick of it, the actual natives of Egypt are Copts, and they're Christians. And they don't get treated terribly well by what the nifty, shifty, hefty lefties seem to consider the most tolerant religion to ever come down the pipe. In actual fact, it's one of the least tolerant belief systems. When I say belief systems, I'm including Nazism and Communism in their number. Okay? So it's approximately at that level. I don't think it's as intolerant as Nazism, but maybe about as intolerant as Communism. Now, so Pater, what does that have to do with Cleopatra? Well, if you look at Greek, Cleo means glory, and Cleopatra means roughly glory of the Father. Huh? Could it be that Cleopatra was Greek? I think they say she's the first one of her line, of her dynasty, the Ptolemaic dynasty, that actually learned native Egyptian. Huh? Yeah, her dynasty, the Ptolemaic dynasty, we say Ptolemaic. It starts with a PT. They were Greek. Ptolemy, the guy who founded the dynasty, was the first Ptolemy, I'm going to say Ptolemy. I don't want to end up spitting on the camera. I'm trying to say the name. He was a general of Alexander the Great. And two of his, Alexander's generals kind of divided up the empire that Alexander had set up in Asia. So one was called Seleucus or something like that. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce his name. Seleucus Seleucid Empire, basically in Asia. And when I said Asia, I should have said outside of Europe, because Ptolemy's dynasty empire was set up in Egypt and in adjoining parts of Southwest Asia, whereas this poor woman said Northwest Asia. Northwest Asia is kind of like where the Hungarians came from. So they came from, I was going to show, here's Asia, over here is Europe, down here is Africa. These are the Ural Mountains, or as we tend to mispronounce it. Well, I'm mispronouncing it. It should be something like Ural or something like that. But the Ural Mountains, we tend to say it Ural Mountains. And the Hungarians came right from here, just judging from the folks that speak a language or languages that are most closely related in the whole wide world to Hungarian. Right here, up in the Arctic Ocean, there are mountains. Where they came from. So this would be Northwest Asia. Down here, Southwest Asia. Arabia, the Arabian Peninsula, the so-called Holy Land, very unholy land, basically Israel and the Gaza Strip, Lebanon. You probably have to include Turkey in there. And incidentally, the Turks, where they came from originally, everyone's talking about like how they've been colonized, settler, never been colonized, never been imperialized, never settler. And they came from over in Siberia. Siberia. So they've been, I think, of all the peoples of the world, the most successfully settler, colonizing, imperializing, because they've never been that themselves, at least the ones who ended up in Turkey, and they've been amazing at settler, colonizing, imperializing others, including Jews in the Holy Land. So they even settler, colonized, imperialized the most successful group of settler, colonial, imperialists, and I'm talking about stuff that stretched over a millennium in world history. That was the Arabs. So they even settler, colonized, they were even more brutal in terms of their settling and colonizing, imperializing the Arabs. And they were very good at homogenizing and what's the term that Gramsci came up with? I just woke up, so I'll let you know. Yeah, this starts with H. Hegemonizing. Homogenizing, hegemonizing. And up until recently, of course, Muslims were saying, thank God for the Turks. They might have even said something, thank God, because Arabs were starting to lose their fighting edge, and the Turks came along and whetted that edge of the Muslim sword. Nowadays it's not so fashionable for them to say it, but because that kind of conflicts with the narrative. There's a nice nifty shifty hefty lefty term. The nifty shifty hefty lefty narrative of a tolerant Islam, like super tolerant. Anyway, so it's no longer politically correct to say that. I mean, it could get you into trouble. If you're an academic, it could get you losing your job. And what's that called? Oh, witch hunting. But nifty, shifty, hefty lefties don't do witch hunting. They only get witch hunted. In the late 40s, they were getting witch hunted in the United States. They could lose their jobs. Of course, nifty, shifty, hefty lefties in the Soviet Union in the late 40s. They didn't have people just losing their jobs. They had people losing their lives. Yeah, that's real witch hunting. Okay? Real witch hunting. The witch hunters way back in the day when they took out, what was it, 7 witches or something like that? 70? Like around 1700 in Massachusetts. I think they actually killed the witches. Okay? Now, so Hatshepsut, I'm going to say Hatshepsut because we don't know how this stuff is pronounced. We really don't. I mean, basically, we don't have much of an idea of the vowels in Egypt. That's why when you're seeing Egyptian words, not so much Egyptian proper names, because we've got somewhat of an idea. It's probably not a very good idea. From the Egyptian king list, which come down through, I believe it's in something like 4 recensions. So we've got, and that would be in Greek. Censorinus, I think, was the name of the guy who put this thing down, and it's passed down to us through the church fathers, I guess. But if you look at Egyptian words, ancient Egyptian words, they tend to have a lot of E's in them, and that's because E is the fallback vowel that Egyptologists put into Egyptian words. They don't have a clue from Coptic or whatever what the word was. Ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs were basically consonantal in nature. They just had consonants and what are called semivowels, but you could call them semiconsonants Y and W. So Hatchepsut. So yeah. Now, like very early on, she said 20 years, 25 years after she died, her inscriptions were hammered out. I don't know if they ever even found her tomb. It probably was ruined on the instructions of the person she acted as regent for, Thutmose, however you want to mispronounce it, the third. And I think the idea was to, you couldn't touch her really in life, although it's possible he had her killed. He would have to have been a fairly brutal kind of leader. He's a very successful military leader. And I wouldn't be surprised if he had her killed. He was about 24, I think, when he took over officially. And but he was wanting to ruin her afterlife. Just give her, I guess, nirvana, non-existence, by hammering out her names. Not just name. Pharaohs at that point in time had 5 names. And of course, that's at any particular time. They've changed the names back and forth. They generally kept their throne names. Their throne names. It's so, like Ramses was a throne name. It wouldn't have been the name that they were born with. This is general practice, just as a matter of interest or non-interest, if you're not interested. Like when Queen Elizabeth II just died recently, was told that her father died when she was in Africa. They said, "So, what do you want your name to be?" "Queen Elizabeth." Yes, she said, and that was unusual. That's why you get so much repetition in names. Like I think there were 8 Edwards so far in Egyptian English history, and now we've got 3 Charles. And now that they should just call him Chuckles the first, the most recent king. And he kept his, like his birth name. So I just mention that because eventually I'm going to be talking about Egyptian history, and we'll be talking about how many Ramses there were. There used to be 12 of them. Not in ancient times, in relative ancient times, in modern ancient times, when Egyptologists, like about 100 years ago, they said, there are 12 of them. Now they say there's 11. Well, they're working in the right direction. And the whole thing is, I don't want them to go too far and have too few Ramses. But, like when you got these names, like Ramses, but they have other names. The trouble is Ramses II, when you look in a book, I know it's out of date, but like they just find more names of Ramses II. When you look how many names Ramses II had, versions of his 5 different names, it goes through pages. Pages. It's not like 7 different names. It's, let's say, 5 pages of names, different names that he had. So when some of these later Ramses.
Why would that be? Would that be to relate to like various constituents of his people?
And in what way?
Well, people might have different cultures, and so they'd have different names, and he wants to seem relatable.
And what would be the most important part of the culture for a political person? Because you're on the right track. I want to see if you can really nail it. So, do you know what Ramses means? Can you detect the different parts? We'll take Messe off, and what do you got at the beginning?
Or I don't know, James. Why don't you just say? Oh, okay. Yeah.
So Ra was the tutelary god, sun god of Heliopolis, as the Greek called it. It's On in the Bible. It's northeast of, well, it might be part of, Heliopolis might be part of Cairo now, but northeast of the traditional northern capital of Egypt, Memphis. And so it was important for them. But yeah, of course, it's like he's putting up a monument. In southern Egypt, he's going to have Amun mentioned in his name, you think, in one of his names. Let me think what his name is. Yeah. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look at my works, ye mighty, and despair. That's Shelley. And he's talking to the tyrants of his day. So it was about 200 years ago. My name is Ozymandias. Well, that's how badly you can get names screwed up going from one language to another. So that's a Greek rendering of. Now, just listen to this. Ozymandias, User Mat Re. So, what does that mean? Establishing. I'm not sure what User Mat is, like the truth of Re or something like that. Might be glitching on that. But yeah, so that was another name of Ramses. Now that's Ray there, so that's another Ray. But oftentimes you had Miamun or Meramun, and that's incidentally, if you were going, oh, there's two. When James was talking about Narmer-Za-an being Naram Zu N, there's an extra R in there. Naram Zu N. Narmer, after the M, there's an extra R. Okay, listen. Mer Amun, beloved, or Amun, beloved of Amun. Mi Amun. That's how it's rendered oftentimes. It looks as though the Egyptians dropped the R at the end of a syllable. Do other people do that? Yeah, the Germans do it. The English do it. I think people in the northeastern United States tend to do it. On and on and on. It tends to happen. So just in case you were getting a little bit anal on me there, wake up and smell the coffee. So Hatshepsut, this woman says she Egyptian culture was never so cultured until she came along. Yeah, she had this shopping expedition, and I'm being ironic, down to a place called Punt. It wasn't mythic, okay? Like she says, Pauline grabbed that. Not mythic. Somewhere outside of Egypt. She went there. It was a huge, big thing. And
just because you don't know something, don't
know where
expect that it doesn't exist.
Yeah. The doctors were having trouble that way. Hey, James has got all sorts of symptoms we can't explain. It must be in his head. Turns out it's bone marrow cancer. Yeah. So that went on for almost 9 years. That syllabus. I knew there was something wrong, but we'll talk about that on another occasion. Several other occasions. I might even give numbers and names. Someone's got to talk about these hosers. Anyway, so she goes on to talk about Nefertiti, who came a little bit after Hatshepsut, and seemed to suggest that she exercised some sort of power. There is a woman. So with Nofru, Hatshepsut, there's another woman who exercised power as a king. And some people think it was someone by the name of Smenkare. And then there was Tuasret. So that's only 4. She's claimed that first one. What was the name that she gave? Marine or something like that. Okay, and Marine, I'm not sure. Basically a non-entity who didn't rule as a king. Or a queen. Anyway, well, she would have been a queen to some king. And then she acted as a regent. So she's saying, now, this is an interesting kind of passage. It would have been shocking. It's kind of shocking now. So this is written to the Hittite king. And the Hittites were located in present-day Turkey. And it's a queen of Egypt. I'm not sure who it is. She says they want to set up a commoner as king of Egypt. I don't like that. So obviously she was first in line. You see what I'm saying? Maybe the only offspring of the true king who died. And they're trying to set up, it wouldn't be so much a commoner, but someone from a secondary wife. And so what she says is, send me one of your sons, and he can be king in Egypt. And the Hittites waited a year. Is this a trick? And it might as well have been. Because they finally sent a guy called Zananza, something like that. If I got it wrong, I'm just going from the top of my head, not from the mouth. And of course what happens is, as soon as he crosses the border, the Egyptians get hold of him and whack him. You know? And that didn't please, I don't know how to pronounce his name, I've just read it. I've never heard it pronounced. Sapalulu Umas. That caused them a considerable amount of grief. You never want to lose a kid, you know? And that's what they were saying, you know. Well, they're figuring it's a trick, and it might as well have been, because the guy ended up getting killed. But so this woman was kind of, you see, she didn't even want to try to exercise power in Egypt. And some people figure it was Nefertiti. I think it's because they got their time frame off a little bit. I think it was actually Akhenaten is the person that she's talking about. And she wanted to take over instead of Akhenaten, but her plans would have been ruined by this potential king being killed basically when he crossed the border. And that wouldn't have been into what we think of as Egypt. It would have been the border of the Egyptian Empire, which would be someplace in the Holy Land, so-called Holy Land, or Syria, someplace like that. Anyway, so Nefertiti, she makes all sorts of suggestions, well, not all sorts, but some. Oh, you know, there's stuff behind King's Tut tomb. They're kind of sensing some stuff, and there could be. King Tut's.
Well, she was saying some people believe it's Nefertiti, and she said she's just excited that they're finding something.
Yeah, but you know, she's wanting to make Nefertiti another queen. You see what?
Yeah, I get what you're
ruling
saying.
Queen. And I'm going, yeah, don't make things up. I mean, she was talking about Hatshepsut. Well, we can kind of reconstruct what Hatshepsut was thinking. What? You know, you're writing a novelization. You nifty shifty, she might not be a nifty shifty hefty lefty, but I suspect she is. You nifty shifty hefty lefties do too much of that. If you want to do a novelization of history, write a historical novel and be honest about it. Don't go around rewriting history. Oh, we're doing revisionism. No, you're writing a novel and it's a bad novel, because what you're supposed to do when you're writing a novel is verisimilitude, the similitude of truth, the seemingness of truth. Get something that actually makes a little bit of sense if you're going to make lies up, please. So she just passes over with a fast passing of gas. Twasra. Now, yeah, so the system of succession breaks down, but that's a different sort of thing. It broke down with Hatshepsut, but it went from strength to even greater strength. Whereas I don't know much about Sobek Nofru. Is that because I'm not informed? She's basically just a name from what I can tell. Most, I'm not kidding you, most of the pharaohs' names are just names and king lists. We've got no history. In essence, wake up and smell the coffee. Before 500 BC, we don't have a history of Egypt.